Louisiana within the United States. So I'm going to go through a few pictures and then play a couple of rounds, maybe 3 rounds. Um, this is like the southwest corner of Louisiana, close to the Texas border, close to the coast. You're going to see a lot of places in Louisiana. There's kind of like three main types of trees, and that's a good one to go off of. There's, palm trees. There's these very tall, like southern pines, and then there's kind of deciduous trees. And if you see any palm trees, you're going to be pretty far south in the state, closer to the ocean. These pine trees are a little bit more all over, and this might be a little exception. Kind of like the more like west and the more north you go, you're going to see more of these trees on average. Whereas, like, you go more east towards the Mississippi River, towards New Orleans, it's not like you'll never see a pine tree, uh, you know, but you're a lot more likely to see deciduous, oak trees. What do you call it? I know like magnolia, cypress. I can't tell all those apart. You're a lot more likely to see kind of those types of trees with like moss hanging off the branches, that old Southern Gothic style. Um, Here's an example. It's kind of south central Louisiana. You got a lot more of these bushy, big trees. This is kind of like at the fringe of Delta country. Obviously, this is kind of more of a typical um, chain store area. This is in New Orleans itself. I think one thing about New Orleans, you don't need to memorize the color sign for every city, but the biggest city here in Louisiana does use these blue signs. Here's an example of like a live oak tree. I looked this one up, but these are pretty common. They got the huge branches that often, not in this case, would have that moss hanging down from them. Like you're not going to see the trees with the moss very far inland anywhere on the Gulf Coast. So that's usually a good sign you're close to the ocean. This is more like north east Louisiana. You can see a lot more mix of trees. These deciduous trees. I focus on the trees first because a lot of these small southern towns, they kind of look the same with these one-story houses. The newer ones have kind of the siding. The older ones a lot of times have brick. Um, Typically you don't see sidewalks and stuff nearly as often. If you see a dog kind of running around without any leash or just kind of roaming free, that it's a lot more tolerant around that about that in kind of places like Louisiana, but that doesn't really narrow it down. Whereas like it's kind of less socially acceptable in a Midwestern state, for example, or Northeastern state to have dogs run free in a neighborhood compared to a Southern state. That can be a sign if you're into that. This is a more rural area, north center Louisiana. You can just see like a lot of trees in general. It's once you get kind of off of the beaten path, off the river delta, a lot of places are pretty heavily forested outside of the major towns. And then kind of more to the far northwest of the state, this is Bossier City, which is close to Shreveport. And here you can see one thing you probably see throughout Louisiana is the grass is not going to be this kind of verdant northern cool temperature grass. A lot of times this is kind of short and patchy. I don't know the down to the species, but more of like a Bermuda grass or more of a southern grass. Sometimes it has more of this like spongy look to it, for lack of a better word. And a landscaper I'm sure would know more, but that's a good thing to keep an eye out. If you got money and irrigation, you can make kind of this nice, lush, delicate northern grass grow anywhere, within reason. But, this kind of stuff, you don't see it very often as you go further north. This kind of like patchy, spongy grass. So that's just like general rule of thumb. I mean, all these are definitely rules of thumb. So let's go through a few examples entirely within the state of Louisiana. As usual, I kind of like to play without being able to move, and I'll give myself 1 minute per map so that we kind of go bang, bang, bang and get through this stuff. So we start here. Loading, loading, loading. I kind of get docked when it loads. Okay, here, when you see this kind of, I mean, we may be very close to the ocean, because you have ocean-going ships. That's kind of a dead giveaway. It's kind of like a little bit of the edge of the bayou, edge of the Delta country. As you look southeast, you see some stuff. Just trees, just water, just tall grass. So this is probably fairly easy in Louisiana. The thing is that, I don't think you're right in New Orleans. This looks like something maybe more out here or more out here, So as we're running out of time, let's just call it here, kind of split the difference. It's pretty strict to be 37 miles off and you only get 2,500 points, but that's life. Okay, here you're definitely a little further inland, rural. It's kind of a random place for a fire hydrant, if you ask me. So maybe it's not quite as rural as it seems at a glance to have a fire hydrant here. Now, when you look at this, you're not going to have much to go off of here, as far as signs or landmarks or buildings. But here you see kind of more of, I'd say, central to northern Louisiana, just because of, you're not seeing any pines, you're not seeing any palms. Kind of a hill, maybe it's a levee. Sometimes you get that. So I'm going to go like central and then like towards the east. New Orleans area. That is weird. Okay. Guess I don't know my Louisiana as well as I thought. I was right that it was next to the river. Here it is nothing but pines. So this is kind of rural. So this is very much. The problem is it can either be kind of east or north. And you got to like split the difference here. Some deeply dark forests. It's a nice road. I'm going to go in here. I could be off here or the other way. Let's see. Okay, that was relatively close. That was 28 miles. All right. I feel good about that one. 53 seconds. Another thing, it's Louisiana. Every place is flat. But here you got palms. You just have kind of like this open look. I don't know if this is something to do with the oil industry, holding tanks. I should know more about that. Playing this game just helps me realize how ignorant I am about a lot of things, in some cases. But I think that we see here nice open highway. I'd almost say again we're on this Highway 90 somewhere. Whoa, that is very far out at the tip of Louisiana. Wow. Okay. This is one where it's tough when you do a map on one state because your logic can be right. I think 269 points is pretty harsh because in the scheme of Louisiana, I'm actually pretty close. But that is what it is. Last but not least, and that's why, I don't worry about the points as much when I'm doing a single state. It's more I'm just trying to get practice with that state. So, I figure out I'm in Louisiana. Here you have, looks like almost a dead end in someone's compound. I wouldn't like to drive up this road so much, but we gotta make a call. I'm gonna go up here a little bit more towards Shreveport. Also in the western part. So 105 miles off. I guess technically I can see why the score is so low, but feels like you're kind of in the area. Now, if this was like a map of the U.S., it'd be pretty close. So there you go. I'm going to play again. Let's see if we can at least get 10,000. Farming. So your farming in Louisiana is going to mostly take place more in this flat country. You can even almost see the outline here. Up here, kind of up in here. Not very little, you know, towards the west or towards the far north. It's going to look this flat. I'm going to stick close to the river, and I'm going to go maybe in here somewhere towards the eastern part. You know, 60 miles off, but the logic is fairly good there. The old one-story brick southern house. This looks like a fairly big town. Pretty wide road, goes a long way. We're not in New Orleans. But it's a town, so you know, where are we? Instead, we could be in a suburb or we could be somewhere else. But we have pines, we got yada yada. I'm gonna say Monroe. Let's just take that guess. Could be Alexandria, could be Shreveport. Yeah, okay. I almost guessed Shreveport. Whoa, this is old coverage. Off in the woods somewhere. Probably the driver was lost and never seen again. I'm sorry, I shouldn't joke that much. It's just a stereotype. These are trailers. Boy, I bet those things get hot. Boy, I bet that is an uncomfortable place to live. You see, one of the reasons I love Geoguessr, you just see how so many different people live throughout the country, both luxuriously and sometimes not so luxuriously. This is almost like second world country level, I would bet. But we have to guess. I think we're in the middle of nowhere, and with the non-pine tree, I'm going to go a little bit more north and central / east. You're telling me that's out. Yeah, there's this part of Louisiana too. It can be tricky. Okay. I'm not going to get to 10,000 unless I get pretty lucky on one of these guesses. Pines, pines, pines. And here you see you're also in the countryside, but it's looking a little better. Whoever this is has multiple vehicles. You know, we already know we're in Louisiana, but this kind of patchy, short, thin, southern grass can sometimes be a clue if you're trying to decide between a southern and a more northern state. Okay. To go more in this direction again. This time it is close to Monroe. Alright. Last but not least, number 5, exit 267A. Well, that's a very, got all these pines. Ah, this is where you need to remember, I think exits usually go west to east. Do they, though? Yes. So, I think you're gonna be over here. Oh man, close to Slidell. So 55 miles off in a state the size of Louisiana, and I get 1,700 points. It's definitely some pretty harsh scoring, but I think you get the idea how we're doing this. So I feel like the only one where I was really off was number 3. Okay. I think that's good for now, and you know, the points of these, you know, isn't that I'm going to become an expert on Louisiana, but it's just as you get, it's to familiarize yourself with different parts of the U.S. and just to think through, like, especially with the tree coverage, the types of buildings you see, prosperity levels. So I'm going to be systematically doing this and getting familiar with different states in the U.S. You might be hearing some cats in the background.